Undercurrent, sponsored by John Hughes in Victoria Park. Choose your station before you choose your program. Absolutely.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Undercurrent. I'm Christy Mollica. Well, I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that the cost of living is just getting higher and higher, especially here in Perth, and I used to live in London. Well, next up, with her debut appearance on Undercurrent, Juanita Shepherd takes a look at exactly that.
The Western Australian Council of Social Service Cost of Living Report 2012 indicates that low-income households are struggling to afford a basic standard of living. The Council continues to advocate for concessions reforms to ensure tariffs and concession for low-income households are adequate and given to those who need them the most.
WACOS released some research recently into the high cost of living in Western Australians for many families who are living on low incomes or vulnerable in terms of their casual employment or insecure employment, meaning they might not have enough income to meet their current commitments in terms of household basic living costs. So what we're seeing is that we're starting to see high rates and continuing to grow in terms of some of the signals that people are living in financial hardship, such as needing additional times to pay their bills or being at risk of disconnection from essential services, increased demand for emergency relief and financial support from community service organisations. So we know that there are many families out there who are struggling with the high cost of living, and that the concessions that are currently available are really important to help them make ends meet. But we also know that even with the current levels of concessions and support, there are many more that are continuing to slip through the cracks and still experiencing that financial hardship. So it does mean we need to look closely at those concessions and see whether or not they're adequate or appropriate for the current needs.
I've got a teenager and a 10-year-old, and it's just way too much. I spend close to $300 a week on shopping. Well, the government should stop rising everything, drop the prices for once, instead of making everything go up. Just drop their prices. That's what I reckon. It's the only way people are going to enjoy life and not struggle no more.
Despite the government's efforts to aid those that are struggling, there exists a worrying relationship between nutritional poverty and low-income households.
One of the biggest issues confronting our community at the moment is the rise of obesity, particularly obesity in children. And a central theme here is that those kids aren't getting the sort of nutritional balance that they need. And in lower socioeconomic communities, that's because their parents are often accessing very cheap foods, which are high energy foods, but low nutritional quality foods. And as a result of that, you're having a knock-on effect. We have an increase in child obesity, but you also have children going without meals. So that has an impact in terms of health. It has an impact in terms of education, because kids that aren't eating properly aren't learning properly. So what that means is you have an increase in diabetes, the increase in cardiovascular diseases and other diseases related to poor nutritional profiles. So evidence shows that people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds have poorer health and well-being throughout their lives. It means a greater emphasis on preventative health. It means programs that educate people about the importance of balanced diet. But it's also about working with the retail industry, the food industry, and with those sort of food outlets in our communities to make sure that those healthy options are available.
Low-income households are forced to cut corners in order to make ends meet, resulting in an increase in energy-dense foods, leading to a shorter life expectancy in the longer term due to a rise in chronic health diseases and much higher costs for WA's public health systems. Despite the government's efforts to aid those that are struggling, there still exists a number of problems. Housing costs represent 30 to 40% of household expenditure for model households and rose 13.2% in the last financial year.
The trends in WA is that it's continuing to get worse for families who are on the lower incomes, but for average West Australians, their net position in terms of cost of living and income is actually improving. So as a whole, as a state, our economic position is continuing to strengthen, which means we are in the fortunate position of being able to afford to do more for people who are struggling and living at that lower income level. So we'd be calling on the state government to take up that responsibility. We know they've got the capacity to do it, and to redirect more to those people who need it the most.
Winnie Shepherd, WTV.
Well, there seems to be a bit of a theme running through tonight's episode of Undercurrent Money. Well, next up, we take a look at gender wage inequality and yet another debut from another Undercurrent reporter, this time from Stephanie Martin.
Don't you think I know exactly where I stand? This world is forcing me to hold your hand. 'Cause I'm just a girl, a little lonely.
With over half our nation's university graduates comprising of women, why does a gender pay gap still exist in Australia?
Well, I think it's probably just traditional. I mean, traditional is the wrong word, but it's something that has been the case for a long time. Really, there's no good basis for it.
I think chauvinism may play a small part in it, but from what I see in the street, not so much. I know there's a lot of rules still with health and safety that women can't actually lift as much as men or different rules like that. I think those rules would have a big part to play in it, definitely in a workplace.
I don't know there necessarily is one actually.
Men and women do different jobs and men have better techniques than women.
Australian culture is, I would say, very sexist, especially the generation like my family, my parents, so to speak, because like their generation after the baby boomers, was very, men are like this, women are like that, this is how it is, men don't cry, women stay at home.
Well, I think there are a couple of reasons for the gender pay gap, and first of all, one is the undervaluation of women's work. Women tend to be concentrated in those sectors such as the caring, sort of nurturing or community services industries. The other thing is that women tend to do the burden of unpaid domestic work. Then the final reason is basic discrimination, unfortunately. One statistic which really jumps out at me as being of concern is that when you look at graduates, so people who've just graduated from uni, there's a $2,000 pay gap between female and male graduates. And so all those other factors are reduced because they have the same education, the same work experience. Most people don't have children at that stage, but there's still this difference, and that can only really be attributed to gender.
I think it's unfair because, we're all equal and we're all human, so we should all be at the same level.
A fair day's work for a fair day's pay should apply to both genders, and if the same work's being done, it should be paid at the same rate.
I find it very weird, I don't think it happens everywhere. I mean, where I'm from, women and men are paid equally, and because women also have another job back home more than men.
I think it's still a bit of a shock that we're still like that, I guess, in today's society, especially since we've kind of progressed so far, like technology-wise. So the fact that we haven't progressed in that state with women being equal to men in the pay sector, it's a bit shameful.
We know how important caring skills are in our society, so it's an injustice that they're not valued in the same way as technical skills are. And I think that really, again, comes down to the way we stereotype or the way we make cultural assumptions about how women are and how men are, and caring and nurturing sort of qualities are traditionally ascribed to women. But when it comes to combating the gender pay gap, I think I'd say to women, do stand up for yourselves, ask what you're worth, but at the same time, I don't want to suggest that it's women who need to be fixed to fix this problem, because it's much bigger than that. There are a lot of women out there who are doing the right thing, who are demanding what they're worth and standing up for themselves, and it doesn't always go down so well. Not nearly as well as it does when men do.
I don't know, maybe women should just prove that we're the same as men. I don't know, strive harder.
Legislation's difficult. I suppose that is one answer. Otherwise, really education.
I think it's about creating opportunities for women.
I think that employers really need to take a stand and take a long, hard look at themselves, and there are a lot of them already doing some fantastic work in this area. But I would suggest all organisations need to do a gender pay gap analysis. This means looking at all their pay and judging whether they are actually paying women and men the same for the same quality of work.
Make love, not war.
That too, everyone just be happy and friendly and just get people into politics that are actually decent and have the best interest of the people at heart.
I really don't see it as being anything to really fight about. It's just my natural right to get paid the same as anyone else.
We really need to work on changing our culture so that flexible working hours are available to both men and women, and that men aren't stigmatised for wanting to participate more in childcare and domestic work. And I think once we break down those kind of cultural barriers around what men do and what women do, then we'll start to achieve a real gender equality.
As Director of the Equal Opportunity for Women in the Workplace states, every day should be Equal Pay Day. It is a matter of valuing our employees, having equal pay, equal respect and equal opportunity. I'm Stephanie Martin for Undercurrent.
Well, next up, a rather interesting topic for our Vox Pops this week. In fact, one that I was discussing with my colleagues just the other day. Should schoolies be allowed to go overseas for their Schoolies Week? Very interesting indeed. Jackie O'Leary took to the streets of Perth to find out your thoughts.
Young people too often see exotic places such as Bali a cheap excuse for partying and having a good time. But terror levels are in place for a reason, and we need to respect them and take them into account whenever we're planning an overseas trip.
Cause I love you, it's because I love you. Cause I love you, it's because I love you. Cause I love you, it's because I love you. I'd do anything for you.
So such as like school leavers, when kids go abroad for like say to Bali, Thailand, what do you guys think about that? Is that something that you would consider doing?
Yeah, for sure. I reckon it'll be like so much fun. Just like, because you spend like 12 years at school and you might as well enjoy the end of it. Yeah.
Well, I think it'd be fun, but I think it'd be a bit out of control, you know?
Yeah.
Because there'll be a lot of people like going to the same place, like a lot of drinking and stuff.
I would choose definitely to go back to New Zealand for leavers, but it's only if I had the money, you know.
At the moment, there's been terror warnings issued for Bali, Fiji, and Thailand. Do you think that that would concern maybe your friends, maybe yourselves about going? Maybe you'd rethink your destination?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's a bit like dangerous. You don't want to like risk
Die. Yeah, you wouldn't want to risk it at all.
I don't think it would be a concern, in all honesty.
Probably not too much.
Nah, I don't reckon.
Do you think there needs to be more education, like even in schools, about issues around the world?
I would say it would probably help if they had like someone come in and talk to you about the issues if there were any at the time, but I don't think it would be like a long-term program or anything.
Bali at a young age, you can go to clubs, you can buy alcohol, do anything you want, really.
Pretty much the reason we do that is because your parents will be here, they won't be down there, so you can do what you want, they won't find out.
And it's not just that, like in Bali, someone could like slip like something in your drink, you know, and you don't know what's in there, and then, you know,
yeah, definitely.
That's bad.
Well, mind you, in Bali, they do have a lot of undercover policemen. So if you buy drugs from the wrong guy, you're arrested just like that. They face what's the word? Consequences or something. Dire consequence or whatever. Yeah.
Cause I love you, it's because I love you.
I'd definitely go with a group of friends.
Yeah.
So like buddy system.
Not like two people, just
no
like in a group, like a big group.
Or maybe to a place where you know people too. Like if you know someone around the area, then it wouldn't be as bad. Yeah, and especially when people speak your own language, like if they all speak English, then you know what you're getting yourself into. Yeah.
We need to respect the locals of other countries and their customs as well. Keep yourself safe and know what restrictions are in place, and you'll have a far better time because of it. This has been Jackie O'Leary reporting for Undercurrent.
Well, we've already crammed so much into Undercurrent. Time for a quick break for this evening, and we'll be back on the other side of the ad break.
Undercurrent, sponsored by John Hughes in Victoria Park. Choose your station before you choose your program. Absolutely.